Hello and welcome to Real Recollections.
That's not how I remember it.
Where we revisit our favorite childhood entertainment and see if it holds up against our jaded adult lives.
This season, we'll be rediscovering all of Disney's animated classics. Today we're covering Pinocchio.
Here we go!
Oh my goodness. Now we hear from our local cartoon expert with our plot in a pinch.
Roll the camera, Sam!
When you wish upon a star, things get complicated. Suddenly your puppet becomes your son, and a vagabond cricket is all that stands between him and moral apathy. He soon starts hanging with the wrong crowd and grows donkey appendages. Meanwhile, you end up in the belly of a whale with nothing but your fish and your cat. Seriously, how did that happen? Luckily, whales can sneeze, you're a great swimmer, and magic fairies take pity on mortals. Plus, now you have a real good kid.
Thank you, Sally.
And Sam.
Sam.
Can't forget Sam.
The imaginary cameraman for our podcast. I'm Mary.
And I'm Jonah.
How are you doing today, Jonah?
Doing well. How are you?
What have you been up to in the, few minutes during quarantine when you're away from me?
Oh my goodness. Today I fell asleep. I took a nap at like 10 a.m.
Like 3 hours after you woke up?
And I could not wake up. I was so exhausted.
Yeah. Remember, because we were going to record this earlier, and I found you passed out. Oh,
yeah. Don't take naps at 10 a.m.
I have a hard time taking naps. I feel
Me
like...
too!
I feel like I never wake up, happier from the nap. Unless it's really short, just 5-10 minutes.
And you were wondering why I was so grumpy.
Oh my gosh. We're not doing that movie today, Jonah. We're not talking about Grumpy.
I know, we're talking about Pinocchio.
Pinocchio!
So what do you remember of Pinocchio, Mary, from when you were but a wee little one?
A wee little one. Well, back when I was a wee little one, apparently somewhere else, in some other country where I was raised, I think the main thing I remember about Pinocchio was that it was terrifying. I just thought it was the most scary movie ever. I mean, what happens to those donkey children? I mean, I know we're going to get to that, but that's so scary. And there's a lot left unresolved. A lot of the villains don't get their comeuppance and such. Anyway, but I'm sure I didn't think that as a child. As a child, it was just scary. And then to add to that, not only did I watch it as a scary film, but then we went to Disneyland and you get to experience it in person. It's like, oh, if there's ever a film that I really wanted to get under the skin of, it was Pinocchio. I really want to be thrown in that giant Stromboli cage. Oh my gosh. It's a bit much for me.
Yeah, I have to say I 100% agree. Pinocchio is it can be a very traumatizing show if you're not prepared for it. I think part of the reasons is because when you're a kid, you know that you've done things wrong and
nobody's perfect.
And you don't understand how the world works quite yet, and you're like, am I going to turn into a donkey?
Is my nose going to grow into 3 feet long?
If I do bad things, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my mom said that if you ate too many carrots, you would turn orange.
I'm pretty sure it was a joke.
I think that actually there might be some truth to that or something.
Oh, really?
But you have to eat a lot of them. Anyways, I had a nightmare that night that she was eating carrots and I was like, Mom, stop. And she turned into a carrot.
Oh my gosh.
On her waterbed, because she had a waterbed.
At the time?
At the time. So I think that's why this show was so scary for me when I was a kid, because I totally believed that could happen to me.
Yeah, because when you're a kid, anything can happen. Yeah. Those things could be true. Even if you're a smart kid and and even though you know intellectually, that's not going to happen, you still feel like it could happen when you're a kid. Right. It's very real.
Right. When you start watching more scary things as a kid, you're always reminding yourself as you're watching it, it's not real. It's not real. It's not real.
I know, and our dad loves to remind us, even now, if we're watching something scary, why are you getting scared? It's not real. And we're like, yeah, it's not real. I'm not scared. And I'm not going to bury myself under this blanket. Or whatever it is.
Yeah, but I think other than the donkey thing, I don't
occurrence.
I don't really remember that many details from the show.
You know what? Actually, one of my favorite parts when I was a kid is I really liked Figaro and Cleo, the cat and the fish.
Yeah, but I didn't remember any of their jokes.
No, I didn't either. I just remembered thinking that like their relationship was really important to the film as a kid. Like to me, their story was very important to me. I don't know why, but I just remember really liking Figaro and loving the whole cat loves the fish but can't like say it. I don't know. Like has to pretend like he doesn't like fish because he's a cat. I don't know. I thought it was an adorable friendship.
For a forbidden relationship.
A forbidden romance friendship. Yeah.
Who knows what's going on between those
But that's pretty much what I remember of Pinocchio. I don't think it was one that I watched over and over again. I think because you watch it once and you're like, it's kind of like when you grow up and you watch those films that are really hard and you're like, I think I only need to see that once. It's that, but for kids.
Yeah.
You see it once and you're like, yeah, that was an experience. I don't need to have it again.
Yeah, even if you liked it.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, well, we'll get into this later more, but I think this is a better film than Snow White.
Throwing the gauntlet down.
Here we go.
So, with that in mind, let's move on to so that was how we remembered it as we were kids, and this is how it happened in the past. So, Pinocchio premiered in 1940, so that's 3 years after Snow White, if you're counting or wanting to keep a chart or something. The story is by Carlo Collodi. And he was obviously an Italian. That was my best Italian name reading for you.
Carlo
Hopefully you appreciated that. But he's from Italy, and he wrote the stories episodically. They were kind of came out one chapter or short story at a time.
Didn't you read this whole book?
I
when
did.
You were young?
I would not when I was young. I read it when I was in college. I read it for Italian class, so I read it in Italian. So I remember a lot of it, but some of it is kind of, because my reading comprehension in Italian was not
You
great.
read the whole book in Italian, and that was the best you could do on his name?
That's so sad. I did my best. I should have practiced more. Gosh, everyone's a critic.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, he wrote it in episodes, and it was kind of Pinocchio is not as endearing a character in the original story. He is he's more willful and more I don't know.
Intentionally bad.
More intentionally bad, yeah. He's kind of a little bit of a bad guy.
Cunning.
He's not really cunning. He's kind of dumb, actually. Because he's still gullible, where people can convince him to do other things, but he's not as, naively, nicely gullible, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, for example, this is a really, I think, perfect example. He literally squishes Jiminy Cricket in the books. Jiminy Cricket only talks to him later in the story as a ghost.
Jiminy Cricket's like, don't do that. And he's like, how about you say hello to my foot?
So, a little different than the one in the Disney film, I think.
Oh my gosh.
And the film studio, Disney, was just coming off the success of Snow White when they came into this. Right. And so, they just made a bunch of money. Everyone's like, this is amazing. This whole studio is really great. And they were really moving forward with confidence. With that, they also started building a new studio in Burbank. In fact, there's a funny story where Walt's dad came and visited the studio at Burbank right after it kind of opened. And Walt's showing him around, and his dad looks at him really concerned and is like, but Walt, what can it be used for? And Walt was like, I don't know what he's asking, because that's honestly a really confusing question. I would be confused. I'd be like, it's used for movies, for my movies. That's why my name's on it. Did you notice when we walked in the door? I mean, I have no idea if there was a sign, but it turned out he kind of figured out through the course of their tour that his dad was asking him well, what could this be used for when you have to sell it because this all fails, basically. And Walt kind of thought on his feet and was like, well, it could be used for a hospital. Yep.
And then he gives the rest of the tour as if he's touring what this building could be used for.
So he was probably giving both, right? So he's like, this is what we're using it for, but you can also use it for like a nursing station or something. And so by the time Elias Disney left, he felt a lot better about it.
You know what? Maybe that's why the next story was about your dreams coming true.
And father-son relationships.
Yeah. Father-son relationships and dreams coming true.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Wow, that is like really on point.
Everyone's had that moment with their parents, right?
So, yes, absolutely. Totally ignoring his father's apprehension, they spend another $1 million on top of what they already spent. I mean, they spent $1 million more on this film than they spent on Snow White, even. And one of the scenes, which is 40 seconds long, took $48,000 to film.
You may remember the scene. It's really beautiful, actually. I swear, I have no proof for this, but I swear, like, on all those old VHSs that you watch of Disney movies when I was a kid, they would, like, do those Disney's Awesome, I don't know, compilations, right? Type things. And this scene would always be in it. Where, like, okay, so it's you see the tower, the bell tower, and the bells are ringing, and the doves are coming out, and then you slowly come down into the town, Pinocchio's town. So it's just really beautiful.
Yeah, so, of course, we timed it. It takes 40 seconds, which means it took over $1,000 per second to film this scene. Yeah. And the reason for that is because they used the horizontal multiplane.
If you're wondering what a multiplane camera is, you should either look it up on YouTube and watch Disney explain it, or you can go back to our first episode, Snow White, where we explain kind of how it works. But we're going to go on to the horizontal version of it.
So basically what happened is somebody knocked it over.
I think it was a little more complicated than that.
But so in the first version of multiplane, they would shoot from up above down into it. But for the horizontal multiplane, they shot it
horizontally?
Horizontally?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the camera set up on the ground rather than suspended up above the multiplane.
Kind of like on a train track. The camera's
on a track. And the camera can move up and down, and then the panes that they would have the oil paintings on, they could also move up and down and right and left. So what this allowed them to do was move the camera through the shot, through the different frames, and create much more of a scene, like you're actually in the town. There were a lot of really cool shots.
Yeah, like the scene we're talking about, they come down from the tower, the bell tower. You kind of come through one street, and then you go underneath a stone arch into a big courtyard where Geppetto's house is.
And then you follow along the pathway.
Yeah.
And you see all these kids running around.
And doing all these things. It's a really quite stunning scene. Yeah. And they do another scene like that where they come down. But anyway.
At this time, that was the only medium that they could use this kind of film work in, because now we have drones and we can kind of emulate that.
Or helicopters in some of the olders, right? But this is 1940, so filmmakers don't have access to some of these things. They still got creative shots, but they're not getting above shots that come into the town and kind of wend their way.
Like the opening scene where there's the star, and then you come in and you see the window of Geppetto's shop through Jiminy Cricket's eyes, and then he bounces up and down and the camera moves with him. And as you get closer and closer, you can see more of what it's like inside of the shop. It gets more and more detailed.
More and more detailed the closer you get.
That was another very detailed shot. I think it was like $12,000.
They didn't mention that one quite as much because I think the other one was so much more expensive, but that one must have been expensive too.
Yeah. But, so that was one reason why this film was so expensive. Yeah. Another reason was because they had to halt production for 6 months. Because,
they halted it after 6 months. So they had already put 6 months of work into the movie.
Oh, okay.
And then Walt Disney said, look, guys, this just isn't working. Because he didn't like the design of Pinocchio. Yeah. He didn't like the design of Pinocchio because they were kind of going with a very puppet look, which is appropriate, of course, for Pinocchio. But Walt felt that his movements were too robotic. They weren't boyish
he
enough.
He wasn't likable, and he wasn't relatable.
Yeah, he thought that he was, just like unlikable.
Yeah, so he made them stop all production. I'm sure they felt terrible.
I know. They're like,
he's like, this is so bad. We're not doing any more work on it
until we fix this.
Yeah. But eventually they figured it out. So Pinocchio gets this little cute hat. His face is a lot more human-like.
Yeah,
and
they made him rounder and more boyish.
And his nose got bigger.
Yeah, that's true.
His original nose is kind of twiggy and like stuck up.
He looks a little bit more... He almost looks a little more elegant, actually, as the puppet. Because, he just looks a little bit more like a puppet, I thought.
Yeah.
But in this one, he has like those big baby cheeks. And, I don't know, he just looks rounder in general. He looks like a little toddler.
Yeah, pretty much the only puppet part about him is that he has hinges instead of elbows and knees.
Yeah, it's true.
Really. And then they're sticks, of course.
Exactly. And in addition to that, they were detailed with all the characters in this film. So you've got Jiminy Cricket was kind of a struggle, but a fun struggle for his animator. Because Walt was like, they made Jiminy Cricket obviously a much bigger character in this. They made him his conscience.
He doesn't die first.
He doesn't die by Pinocchio's heel this time. And so, his part became much bigger and therefore he became much more important. And so they were kind of trying to make this cricket as Walt Disney wanted. And Walt Disney basically said, I want him to be cute. Which if you've ever seen a photo of a cricket, I think you would agree that they're not exactly the cutest creatures on this earth.
Any insect.
But crickets especially. I mean, I think ladybugs have an inherent cuteness kind of about them, the colors and everything.
Look at them close.
I guess, but they have a little roundness.
I guess.
So there's some insects, is all I'm saying, that are like more cute.
Sure.
Roly-polies are kind of cute in their
Mary's
way.
in love with insects.
I'm not. I'm really not.
She's gonna list all the insects that she thinks are
fuzzy caterpillars.
So adorable.
Anyway, we can move away from that, but I'm just saying there are some more cute animals, but grasshoppers, crickets. There we go. Crickets are not one of them.
And they like spit on you if you hold them.
Yeah. Have you ever held a cricket before?
Yeah.
I've never held a cricket.
It's scary.
Isn't one of our siblings afraid of crickets?
Yeah, me.
Is it you? I thought it was Heidi or something.
They're creepy. And when they jump, their legs are so powerful.
That's true.
It kind of freaks you out.
I do like their sound, though.
Out.
I get that. What is the difference between a cricket and a grasshopper? Do you know?
No.
I'm just curious.
I know they're different.
I know they're different. I know that Jiminy Cricket gets really offended when they call him a grasshopper. But anyway, what was I saying? So they were trying to make him cute. And so they just kept taking away appendages. They're like, he doesn't need 2 arms or 2 legs. Let's just take those away.
He's going to have human hands.
Now he has human hands and also shoes. And also he just looks like a little gentleman. So basically by the end, they just ended up with a little green man.
Yep.
Who's really cute.
Who does have an
He does have antenna. In the one... Here's an Easter egg for you. Not Easter egg, but probably everyone else has seen it. But in the film, when they get wet and they get out of the water, Jiminy Cricket takes off his hat. And you can actually see he does have antenna.
He has 2 antennae.
Antennae, yes.
Yeah.
Antennas? Antennas. He has 2 antennas. Antennae. I think antennae.
Yeah.
It sounds weird the more I say it. But you can see them when he takes his hat off and then he puts his hat back on. So they give you a little glimpse at the cricketness of him. So that was kind of his struggle, but they made it.
So Geppetto, they also struggled finding the right design for him. They kept trying to peg down exactly what he should look like, but eventually they basically just went with how the actor looked.
Yeah, I think they found the actor and they were like, this guy is exactly what we want.
Yeah, so you should look up the actor Geppetto and
Kristen Rubb.
Yeah, and then look at his picture next to Geppetto. It's pretty uncanny. Definitely looks like him.
Yep. Definitely. Like if they had made a live action film then, I don't know, Pinocchio was just wildly successful, he would have made a great Geppetto. And they also said they used a lot of his like actions and characteristics, like the way he moved and everything. Just everything about him. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. In general, just Pinocchio was so much more complicated than Snow White maybe was. First of all, you had tons of different kinds of movements. I mean, we talked about how they had a hard time with the prince. In this one, they practically had all guys, which they must have just decided they solved the problem. Because there's no explanation on that, but suddenly they have an almost all-male cast in this. And they figured it out. You have, like, the heavy footfalls of Stromboli. He moves very differently from even Geppetto. And Pinocchio moves differently, both when he's a puppet, and Geppetto's kind of moving him around.
Right.
And when he's himself. And you have the distorted even Pinocchio in the fishbowl. So there's just tons of different kinds of movements that they captured in this film. Yeah.
One of the different techniques that they got the most praise for was the way they shot water. And what they did was they would get one of those old-timey windows with all the imperfections in them. Corrugated glass.
Yeah.
And then they would move that slowly across the frame as they filmed. And that would create these ripple
effects.
Light effects that made the water look a lot more real. And this was very cheap, of course, to produce. And that's what they got all this praise for.
Yeah.
And not the $48,000 scene, which nobody even noticed.
At the premiere, they got like a round of applause, an ovation, when there was this one scene with the tugboat, and there's these birds flying overhead, and then you've got the water underneath. And it is a pretty scene. It's a big shot. But they got an ovation for that, but there was no one talked about the scene where they come down from the bell tower, and go through the
$48,000 scene.
So Walt was like, never again. Which is sad. I mean, I'm sure he did it anyway again. He probably just... This is really funny.
Yeah, so that technique for the water is actually the same technique that they will use 40 years later in Little Mermaid.
To help with the Little Mermaid. I think
they probably use different things,
other things as well, but
they also use that technique for Little Mermaid, which is kind of crazy. It held up for 40 years.
Well, they had a whole department that was just in charge of special effects, like trying to find a way to animate water or shadows, etc.
Yeah.
Just a whole department of people.
Another really cool thing that Mary and I actually noticed while we were watching, we didn't even have to look it up, was
here's us patting ourselves on the shoulder again.
We have to have at least one of those every single podcast. But the scene where Pinocchio is locked in the birdcage in Stromboli's cart, and they hit a rock and it starts swinging all over the place.
Yeah.
And so you have the cage swinging, and then you have Pinocchio bouncing back and forth in the cage.
Yeah.
And then there's also this little stand for a bird to stand on, and they're all moving in different ways, and it looks totally real.
Yeah.
And Mary and I turned over to Mary and I said, "How did they do that? That's crazy."
Taken forever.
All those different moving parts, but it turns out what they did is it's called photostats.
Yeah. So they took a film of a like half-size birdcage. They made it smaller so it would be kind of like Pinocchio scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they filmed it. And then they took photos from the film. And what the animators did is they literally sketched over top of it.
They would trace it.
Yeah, they would trace it. This just made it a lot simpler for them to do a scene like this, because for them to have
trial and error, try to get that motion to look right.
That would have taken so much time and money, and it was just so much cheaper to trace it. And then it was already a huge achievement to watch how Pinocchio interacts within all of that.
Right, so they would still change his facial expressions and even the way he moves in some cases.
Because he's the important part, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be thinking about the birdcage. We were, because I was looking for standout animation things because we're doing this podcast. But yeah, that was really amazing to me, that section. And then also the first scene in Geppetto's house. I sort of feel like we don't even get that much detail in shows nowadays. But
I know.
In his house, every single thing is like a feat of craftsmanship.
Yeah, they must have just had one guy that was just in charge of making everything delightful. I don't know. That's what I feel when you're in Geppetto's shop. There's this part where Geppetto goes to put the candle out next to his bed before he goes to sleep. And his candle has the face of an old man. and the wax dripping off the side looks like his wet white hair. And when he puts the little, I don't know, candle putter outer on top of it, it looks like a little, sleeping cap.
Yeah.
You're just like, what a detail to have. It just, all of it adds, I think, to Geppetto's character as well, which is really cool.
And the general whimsy and feeling of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just one of many details in that shot.
Yeah, every single scene has just little intricacies in it.
And there's got to be at least 50 clocks in there.
Oh my
and they're
gosh.
all individual.
And different. It's amazing. It's a really cool place.
And going at the same time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that part's way cool. And part of what helped them get some of the detail in this is some of the new innovations they use. We've talked about some of them, but one thing they started doing in this film, and they would do it for all of their films kind of following this, is they started using clay models of the characters. They would create them, and then they would... that way for each of the animators, so that then they could see the character from every angle when they're trying to animate it, which is really helpful because you can kind of have a picture there, right, as your reference. But a 3D model really lets you go, okay, this is what, and it kind of keeps all the animators together, right? We're all looking at the same kind of model, so we all know what Jiminy Cricket looks like when you see him from the back.
Right.
Side. Whatever.
Right, yeah.
So that must have really helped. I mean, obviously, if they did it for all the rest of their films, they're not going to do something that doesn't help them out. They also would they also had mirrors at their desks. That's what I'm trying to say. And they would the animators would watch their faces in the mirror, and they could draw off of their own expressions, which I think also probably helped. This film, their faces are so expressive, all the characters. Mm-hmm. I think Snow White sometimes, I hate to keep comparing it to Snow White, because I like that movie too, but I don't think the expressions on some of the characters' faces were as strong.
Yeah, I agree. And in general, the overall look is a lot more bold, and part of that has to do with they used much more opaque paints.
Yeah, for the background.
For the background. So the light wouldn't shine through them as much. And it just creates a cleaner look, is what Mary and I noticed.
Yeah.
And we watched this video where they interview a whole bunch of animators who animated
and Disney
during
historians.
That time. And Disney historians. And almost all of them agree that this is the best film that Disney ever produced.
Unfortunately, it didn't make as much money.
Yes. Yes, but it did not have success.
A lot of people think it's because of the war. The war started just 5 months earlier, so they didn't really have the international money coming in. They couldn't, send it to wherever they sent their movies, overseas, right? Because of the war. And so they only had the domestic funds. And some people said that the domestic money they made was quite good, but it still lost $1 million.
Yeah.
That extra $1 million they spent.
Unfortunately, because I really do think that this movie is very good. Yeah. And the critics loved it.
Yeah, critics thought it was amazing. It won 2 Academy Awards.
Yeah. It won Best Film Score and also won Best Song.
Obviously. For When You Wish Upon a Star. I mean, it's Disney's thing. It's Disney's theme still. So you have to think that must be one indication that Walt Disney, this was one of his favorite films. I mean, the fact that it just kept coming back.
Yeah.
When You Wish Upon a Star. Yeah.
That's Disney's thing,
Yeah.
That your dreams can come true.
Yeah, that kind of, I mean, it's a little bit in Snow White as well, but I think this one kind of, they found their anthem,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. But yeah, it took 2 years and 750 animators, but that's how Pinocchio was made.
Yep.
So that's how it happened.
So we just watched this week, and what do you think, Mary? Does it hold up in your jaded adult life?
I would say it's just as scary. In some ways, it's sadder and scarier, actually, because you have even more context for it in your imagination. You go all sorts of places.
Where do you go in your imagination?
Oh my gosh. Well, like I said, I think the donkeys are just so unfortunate.
Oh, yeah.
That scene where the little There's a little donkey, and he's talking. He's like, I just want to go home to my mom.
And then he throws them in the cage with all the other
all
talking
the ones who are
donkeys.
still talking.
What happens to the talking donkeys?
I don't know.
Do they kill them? I wouldn't put it past him.
I wouldn't put it past him. He's horrible. Did you notice this time? His assistants are literally furry black shadow people.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because when Pinocchio is lying in that other scene, he says that he was kidnapped by big monsters with green eyes. And that's what they look like. They look like big monsters with green eyes.
You guys, don't lie, or you might end up summoning the monsters, I guess, that you lie about.
I bet they're not connected, but I did think it was interesting that they did have green eyes, which was weird.
Yeah. But I love that whole first scene.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so beautiful. I think it's funny that both of the first Disney movies have some element of just breaking and entering, making yourself at home.
That's true.
Snow White walks into the dwarf's house and is like, I'm going to clean this, and I'm going to take care of these orphan children, which is what she thinks they are at the point. But, and then Jiminy Cricket's like, oh, the only light on right now is Geppetto's, so I'm going to go into this little shop.
Sounds like a poppin' place to be.
I know. And then he just comes in and makes himself comfortable.
And warms himself. I think that's my favorite joke, actually, of the whole thing. Jiminy Cricket comes in and he's warming his butt by the fireplace, and he's like, I came in and I started to warm myself.
Editing the story a little bit. Which is interesting. This one has a narration, which the other one, I mean, it's not throughout as much, but it starts with Jiminy Cricket kind of opening the storybook.
Yeah.
And they're so detailed about Jiminy Cricket.
Yes.
Like, he can't open the page, and just all his little scaled things.
Yeah, he gets a little paperweight to hold it down.
Hold the page down so that he can start the story. So fun. But yeah, I love all the clocks.
And the sound, I think in this film, they really succeeded at creating a sound of all the different places. So Geppetto's shop, all the music in there is like ding, 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 ding. It's just all the little music boxes going.
Yeah,
right?
and the clocks.
Yeah, and the clocks ticking. And it creates kind of like this cacophony of sounds, which kind of sound amazing.
Yeah, they do.
It's
really
then
fun.
When you're in the island place, Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island. What's that island place called?
When you're in Pleasure Island,
where they have fun.
It sounds totally different. It's much more. You really feel like you're in a carnival or a amusement park. Yeah,
the sound department is definitely strong here. Yeah, I love the little family in that first scene. I love Figaro. Still love Figaro and his little spoiled child tantrums.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that Geppetto kicks him with Pinocchio's foot when he's still a puppet.
I mean, all these characters, they have a dimension to them. They're not just a caricature.
Right.
So Geppetto, he's a super sweet old man who really wants a son for some reason. By the way, I have some conspiracy theories about that. But he's also super playful with his cat, which may have been his only companion for several years.
And owns a fish, which I don't know how accurate that is.
Who he also loves equally as much.
I know.
Talks to
both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a Disney film, it doesn't seem quite as lonely sad when you're talking to your animals, because they have such emotion and everything. But I have to imagine if you live actioned that scene, you'd be like, what a sweet, sad, lonely man talking to his cat and his fish and his puppet before he comes to life.
I know.
But he's so sweet and so energetic. He's such an energetic man.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the conspiracy theory now?
Yeah, I want to hear everything.
So, in his shop, every single clock is unique. Except there are 2 clocks of shepherdesses.
Whoa.
So. And
you
also,
sheep.
we went back. No, shepherdesses, not a shepherd.
Okay.
They could have done a shepherd and a shepherdess on another one, you know what I mean?
That's true.
But they were both shepherdesses. Why?
Wow.
Why? I think because Geppetto was in love with the shepherdess. But either she turned him down, or maybe they got married and she died in childbirth. And
would be
both
so
her and the child
sad.
died, and so he always
Jonah,
wanted
no.
a child or whatever.
That's really sad,
Anyways,
Jonah.
that's my conspiracy theory. That is based
Send
on
us your
nothing.
conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Why is Geppetto childless? And
What did he do for the first 50, 60 years of his life?
yeah, exactly. Oh, that'd be an interesting story.
Send us his love life.
Send
then
us his
send me
whole
mine.
story. Just the love of my life, please.
Yes.
Actually, just send me that. Wow, that's a good theory.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about it the whole time. Kind of like, what happened to Geppetto?
I feel so bad for him, though, because he loses his son, like, literally.
I know, as soon as he gets him.
moments
Just the
after he
next
gets
day. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, all the characters kind of have a depth and dimension. I love the Blue Fairy, even.
Yeah.
Like, she's not in very many scenes, but her expressions are very good.
Yeah.
I love, actually, the part where she's talking to Pinocchio and he's lying. And instead of being like, Pinocchio, you're lying, you're lying, or just silently sitting there and watching him. Instead, she literally helps him dig a hole for himself. And so he starts lying and he's like, I didn't go to school because I was kidnapped by monsters. And she's like, oh, really? Tell me more about this. And so, like, he keeps going, and then he's like, and then what happened? I died. Basically, he's like, they chopped me up, remember? Until obviously, it's completely unfolds. And then she gives, like,
He told me I was a gold bar, and so he was going to chop me up.
I love Pinocchio. But yeah, so
No,
I think she has, like, a lot of humor to her.
Yeah.
Which is really helped out by the actress, too. She has a great voice.
Right. It was funny when they were doing some modeling for that character with the actress.
Uh-huh.
If you watch the film, most of what the Blue Fairy does is lean forward to Pinocchio.
Yeah, that's true.
Forward and down and back. And so they just had her do all of her lines doing that.
Oh
and they had her go forward and back so many times that they said it actually became very funny while they were filming her.
She got a good core workout.
Oh, you want me to do it again?
You want me to hear it
here we
go?
go. Oh, was that better?
Did that look different that time? Perhaps I should go 1 degree more down.
Let me try going down on a different word.
That's amazing. That's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Let's see. What else do we like? Well, I don't like all the villains. I mean, they're
Which is a good
good,
thing.
but yeah.
They're all really scary and conniving in their own way.
I mean, Honest John isn't as scary, but he ends up making a lot of scary stuff happen.
yes.
Because he has played a little bit more for laughs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he totally is.
Because, yeah, he and Gideon, right?
Yeah. Who was actually originally voiced by Mel Blanc.
Who, if you don't know who that is, that's the voice of Bugs Bunny and basically all the Looney Tunes. He's known as the man of 1,000 voices.
Yeah, because he did every single voice in Looney Tunes.
Yeah, that's right.
But they ended up making that character, Gideon, mute. So silent. So he didn't say anything in the
Other than one hiccup.
I think it's 2.
Is it 2 hiccups?
2 hiccups.
So you can hear Bugs Bunny's voice. 2 hiccups.
Yeah.
Or they're Mel Blanc doing Gideon, I should say. But yeah, those two are definitely played for laughs. I can't help but notice their weird clothes. What is Gideon wearing?
I have no idea. It's like a belly shirt.
I know, because he has like purple sleeves coming out of his cloak thing, but there appeared to be no shirt attached to these sleeves. And then Honest John has cufflinks, but no shirt.
But so does Jiminy. So that might have been a thing.
Is that really... Oh, well, I guess I have to know about this. Jiminy definitely wears it better.
He does.
He wears it a lot.
Classy.
Yeah, he looks classy.
He's a classy
Honest John is not
bug.
classy. Yeah.
No, he's like the opposite of classy. But that's probably my other favorite scene. Is the second time they come and interact with Pinocchio, and Gideon has him with a hook, and so he's running, but he doesn't know he's not moving anywhere. And Honest John goes and starts jogging next to him. Until he gets
jogging in
tired,
place.
and he's like, "Okay, we're done with that." And then he starts giving him this like doctor assessment of like why he is sick and tired. And his conclusion is that he is allergic.
And that's how they send him off to Pleasure Island, right?
They give him a plane card. Like, here's your ticket. You have to go to Pleasure Island. That's my
gosh.
prescription.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a great scene.
But Stromboli is scary, I think. Is Stromboli, right?
The puppet master?
Yeah. He's threatening. I don't know if it's just because he's so big and so, like, he feels very much like he could fly off the handle any second because he's always getting, like, randomly angry, right? And he never does anything to Pinocchio other than throw him in the cage. But there's just, like, that constant threat of violence about him. Well, it's very scary.
Says, when you get too old to perform, I'll make you into firewood. And then he throws his axe into the old puppet.
Oh, it's so scary. Ugh. Also, not a very good way to motivate your performers. Unless you're like, oh, well, then he'll keep performing forever because he doesn't want me to think he got old. And anyway. But it's very scary. Actually, I think it's really interesting if you look at Stromboli is essentially a puppeteer, right?
Right.
And you look at his cart in contrast to Geppetto's shop. Yeah.
Which is also full of puppets and...
Which is also full of puppets and beautiful things, right? And everything in Geppetto's shop, even if it's like a little cluttered or messy, everything like has its place and is all set up nicely. Like Pinocchio, the puppet, is hung very nicely and he's sitting, upright like you would want to be sat, I guess, if you were a puppet, I would imagine. Yeah. You don't just want to be strewn everywhere with your cords all tangled or whatever. And so, whereas in Stromboli's cart, all the puppets are just kind of strewn around the room. They're all like on their side or laying down, and their things are all mixed together
hanging
and
from the ceiling.
Hanging from the ceiling, yeah, but like not nicely. Like it's all tangly, and so I don't know. I thought it was just a really. I don't know if they meant it this way, but it definitely gave kind of an atmosphere of like he doesn't care about these things. He cares about the money.
Yes.
Why would you become a puppeteer if you didn't like children and I don't know? How much money can there be in puppeteering? Why would you, if you were like a really greedy guy, go into puppeteering? You're like, I want to make a lot of money. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not going, it's not even actor or singing. I'm going to create a puppet troupe.
Also, where were his other puppeteers? He only had one wagon, and he wasn't doing anything.
No, there was more wagons.
Was there?
Yeah, because remember the scene where
you're right.
The wagon comes across, that really sad scene where Geppetto's like, Pinocchio!
And he's right there. He's right there.
Oh, I hate scenes like that.
Oh, that's a good scene, though.
That is a good scene. With the rain.
Yeah.
The score is really pretty there. But yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I loved was when Pinocchio finally finds his dad in the belly of the whale. And he fishes him out, but he doesn't even see that it's Pinocchio.
Yeah.
But Figaro does.
Yeah, the cat.
And he's like trying to get Geppetto's attention. And then Pinocchio finally says, Father, Father! And then Geppetto turns around and he's like, oh, Pinocchio! And he grabs a fish instead of him and he doesn't even realize it. And then he finally gets Pinocchio. I cheered up with that part, actually.
I know. I think I got more emotional than when I was a kid.
Yeah.
This time. Just because you're like, it's just a little kid. The way, I think they were really clever in the way that they animated his walking and everything. One of my favorite parts is when he's like performing in I've Got No Strings. And he starts singing and he's scratching his leg.
Yeah.
You're like, that's such a little kid thing to do. He's up there on stage and he's not like a perfect performer. He's like literally scratching his leg instead of,
And I love the irony of that scene too.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he's singing I've Got No Strings, but he has less freedom than he's ever had before.
He just doesn't know it yet. Yeah. And of course, me and Jonah always love the ironic. My two favorite lines are one where Honest John says, "Oh, you ever heard about the Easy Street?" He's like, "You become an actor. There's nothing easier." The idea that going into acting is just the simplest thing in the world. I wish it was Easy Street. I want to live in Honest John's world, if that's even close to true. And then you've got a Jiminy's line right after the performance with Pinocchio, where he's like, what does an actor need with a conscience anyway? Which is my other favorite line.
Too true.
Me and Jonah don't have those.
Overall, I really like this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like... I don't like that transformation scene. I think it's really good, but it's always really scary. And every time I watch it, I just want to curl up.
Yeah, we haven't even begun to talk about the transformation
Pleasure Island.
scene.
Or the fact that when they're going into Pleasure Island, the carriage that they're pulling is pulled by donkeys. Which means those are little kids taking other little kids to Pleasure Island to turn into donkeys.
Yeah. And if you watch the donkeys there, they always have their ears down while they
look really
pulling.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because, like, the carriage master, what's his name? Is that what you say? Carriage master, the carriage... coachman? Coachman.
The coachman, yeah.
The coachman is, was actually voiced the same guy as Stromboli. The same actor voiced both guys. But the carriage... Coachman, sorry. It's Pinocchio sitting there going to Pleasure Island with his friend. What's his friend name?
Lampwick.
That's a weird name. Anyway, and, Pinocchio's like, oh, I've got this ticket and his playing card and everything. But, and they're kind of talking about going to Pleasure Island. And you can tell the coachman is listening and he just smiles. And then he hits the donkeys to go faster. And you're like, that's so dark.
That's dark.
That's a really dark. It's dark.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. It's really sad. And the worst part is that it doesn't resolve. Lampwick, his supposed friend, which, by the way, I feel like I felt for a lot when I was a kid. I still feel for him now.
Lampwick.
But as a kid, I don't think you realize as much, like, the bringing it upon himself type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, it's another kid. I still feel very sad for him now.
Yeah.
But I think they were trying to make him a less sympathetic character. But that scene where he transforms into the donkey, very scary.
Yeah.
For me, the part where his hands turn into the hooves is the part that really pushes it over the top for me.
That part, and then also the shadow image.
Oh, yeah.
Where he bends over and his back goes up like that.
It looks painful, and it looks scary. And his screams turn into the donkey. It's a horror movie. This is a horror movie for children.
I will never forget that scene. I never forgot.
No. When we watched it together, I remembered every single frame of that scene.
Yeah.
It went its way into my brain.
It's just good storytelling. And then Pinocchio starts turning into a donkey and you're like, get out of there!
Get out of there!
Where's Jiminy?
Where's Jiminy? You need to pick up your wooden self and run out of this place.
Yeah.
This is not a place for anybody. And the worst part is nothing is resolved. That could keep going on forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no end in sight to that.
No one ever caught them.
No one ever caught them.
Pinocchio's not going to think
They didn't even burn down Pleasure Island or anything. Like, there was no, like, this will never happen again. No. It was just like, it was so bad that all they did was escape with their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not unscathed because he has a tail and ears until the end of the film.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of actually like that they don't feel like they have to solve every single problem in the film.
It's true. It would be an interesting film to talk with your kids. But I think if I watched Pinocchio with my kids, I would definitely talk to them afterwards. It's not too scary, but I'm just saying. There's some scary things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stromboli never gets caught either.
Mm-mm.
I think in some ways it's actually really effective because I think the world of kids is very scary. Because like we said, when you're a kid, anything's possible. And so sometimes as a kid, I actually liked movies that were a little bit scarier because it felt truer to me. And then when they overcame it, it felt like, oh, I can overcome stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Pinocchio dies in the end. I forgot about that. I forgot that he died.
He's floating in a puddle of water, face down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and he's laying on the bed.
Yeah.
And then he gets turned into a real boy. And he's like, Father. And he's like, what, Pinocchio? He's like, why are you crying?
Like,
and he said,
you're dead,
Pinocchio.
I love Geppetto and his little animations.
Yes, I love Geppetto. That's one thing that really surprised me this time.
Yeah.
Is, as a kid, I didn't really think about
He's like a non-character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this time, I was like, Geppetto is the only person who matters.
And he needs to get his son back so that his wishes can come true.
Because it's his wish.
Yeah.
I also forgot that.
But it is kind of interesting. This just came to me. It is interesting that Geppetto's wish, is for him to become a real boy, that he can kind of have a child, right? But like people who have children and have their wishes in their children, that is also dependent upon the child, you know, making good choices and doing things. So it's kind of true to life, right?
Yeah.
Like, they are your wish, and their happiness is your wish, but it's not all in a parent's control.
Yeah.
You have to depend on your kid to make good decisions.
And a cricket.
And a cricket. and a cricket. You did have a leg up on that. Actually, Jiminy, I love him. Super big personality. Cliff Edwards does a really good job voicing him. He's not the best conscience.
He always shows up a minute too late.
I mean, maybe it's not his fault.
I think they did that so Pinocchio's more likable, so he's not blatantly going against what Jiminy is saying every single time.
Except for the one time when he's like, tell him thank you very much. But I do love that Jiminy is so patient with Pinocchio. He understands that Pinocchio he's basically a lamb. You know, like, he just doesn't, he's brand new. He was born yesterday. You know what I mean? They always say, I wasn't born yesterday. He was born yesterday. And he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he kind of understands that. And so he doesn't really get mad at him very often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is actually really touching sometimes, that he's just like, it's okay, let's just get you out of here, you know?
Out of here, and then we can't.
I know.
So, Mary, does it hold up?
I mean, what does it hold up against? I thought,
do you enjoy it just as much now as you did when you were a kid?
I think I enjoyed it more, but for different reasons than Snow White.
Yes.
Because for Snow White, I was really surprised that it was better quality. This time, I think, honestly, I was really scared of Pinocchio when I was a kid. So I watched it once, and then I was like, yeah, I'm never doing that again. So I knew that watching it again, I wasn't probably going to be fine. But I was... Yeah, I enjoyed it more. I was able to laugh a lot more at it and just see it as like a fun movie, especially since I know how everything goes and everything.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't get as scared. The donkey thing still freaks me out. I still want a live action film where they solve the donkey problem.
Pinocchio too.
Or just an animated short or something. One complaint I have about the movie.
Okay. Sure.
Is that we go through all of these adventures. So many things happen to Pinocchio. So it's a much more complicated story than Snow White in some ways. Just lots of locales, lots of traveling, you know?
Yeah.
They did a good job of piecing it together. So we go through all of this. We literally make it out of the belly of a whale. And we get home. He turns into a real boy. We get like one scene of them dancing. And then that's all we see of Pinocchio.
Yeah.
I needed more. I need more happiness at the end.
Like maybe some father-son song.
Yeah, or even just as Geppetto sings, you see them still dancing or something, or see them go to sleep, or you see him sending them off to school and him actually getting there. But like, it just feels like there's still so much... I still have so much lingering... tension from the scenes before that they don't quite settle me by the end of the film. With Pinocchio. Like, I need a little bit more settling into the end of the film. For me.
I don't totally agree. I think I'm kind of more in the boat of the animators.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the other films recently, but I think it's going to be hard to top this one for me. I thought it was a really well thought out and beautiful movie.
It is well thought out and beautiful.
That would be hard too.
I don't mean to imply I didn't like it. I needed a little bit more happiness at the end. I absolutely love the part with Jiminy Cricket getting his little badge.
Yes.
Of supposedly pure gold, although it's only 18 karat. Our dad pointed out it should be 24 karat if it's pure gold.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It says 18 karat underneath, but it should be 24 if it's pure gold.
Oh, shoot. That blue fairy lied.
The blue fairy lied. She's cheaping him out on gold.
How come her nose didn't grow?
I know. Come on. Because she's magic. She controls it.
She can lie.
You know what's funny is that I think they did this on purpose too. You've got Jiminy Cricket. At the end, he flashes his badge to her, and it looks like a little star on his lapel for just a second. And I wonder if it wasn't a little implication of like, you've got the stars in the sky, right, that you can wish on, and now you've got this little, I don't know.
The little stars there that help you out.
Yeah, your little angels here on Earth.
The people around you.
Yeah, that help you out.
That's beautiful, Mary.
Yeah.
A little tear, man.
And I think it's cool, too, that Pinocchio does make Jiminy a family, too. Jiminy Cricket has a family. They have a family. Everybody's a family now. Oh, also, I do like how they resolve the film musically at the end, too.
Yes.
Because the first When You Wish Upon a Star, at the beginning, kind of ends... It ends on so... to be technical, but it ends in an unresolved sort of place. Whereas at the end, they sing it again, but they have the melody go to do or to the main place.
Right,
yeah.
so the first one's called a perfect inauthentic cadence, and the second one's a perfect authentic cadence.
But the point is, if you listen to both, you'll hear it. That the second one just sounds more final, more complete. It has the choir, it has kind of all those things. The melody goes back down to the bass note.
I think it actually goes up.
Goes up to do.
Dreams come true.
True. Rather than dream come true. No, it goes up to the truth. That's what he does at the beginning.
You're right.
So it goes up to a high note, but it's just a little unresolved. Whereas the other one goes...
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I thought that was a cool little musical thing as well.
Mary read that in her fan-dancy music book.
Yeah, there's this fancy Disney music book, which if you want, we'll put all of the books that we've used to kind of do research and all the videos, we'll put them in the comments.
So many books.
The description, yeah, so that you can kind of, if you want to go read any of them. But the one about music is the one I got this from. It's a bit lingo-y. Definitely has a lot of music lingo. It assumes that you know a lot of words. So, but it is really good.
Yep. Well, now you know our thoughts on Pinocchio, but we want to hear yours.
Yeah. Do you have donkey transformation nightmares? Have you ever wished on a star? Have you ever taken advice from a cricket?
Well, if you have, or if you haven't, you can send us all of your Pinocchio stories and theories and anecdotes at realrecollectionspodcast@gmail.com. And that's real spelled REEL. Or you can post it on our Facebook page or Twitter. Just look up Real Recollections and you'll find it straight away.
Yep. And go ahead and leave us a review.
Yes, like and subscribe.
Yeah. And we'd really appreciate that.
And we're already so grateful that you even listen to us.
Yeah, how did you find this? You need to get a life. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I'm not insulting you. We are very grateful for you.
Well, take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.